The Human Security Officer, Part 47. Gareth's heart still pounded in his chest, even as the immediate danger seemed to have passed. He tried to focus on Penn's words, but his mind was stuck replaying the terrifying encounter with the wolf. The creature's glowing eyes, its coiled, muscular body poised to strike, it was all still too fresh, too vivid. And yet here he was, alive, sitting by the fire with Penn, his mind trying to process the sheer improbability of his survival. He wasn't sure if he should feel relieved or terrified that they had somehow made it through. The fire crackled softly between them, casting flickering shadows across the ground. The sounds of the forest had returned, though they felt distant, as if the world was slowly rebuilding itself after the tension of the last few minutes. A slight breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the cool, damp scent of the river nearby. But despite the calm that was beginning to settle around them, Gareth's nerves were still frayed, his body jittery with leftover adrenaline. Penn, meanwhile, seemed unbothered by it all. She sat across from him, poking idly at the fire with a stick, her expression calm and composed. The fear that had gripped her during the confrontation was gone, replaced by the same cool confidence she always seemed to carry. Gareth admired that about her, how she could stay so steady, even in the face of overwhelming danger. He wished he could be like that, instead of the mess of nerves he felt like right now. "Penn," Gareth said after a moment, breaking the silence that had fallen between them, "why did you follow me out here?" "I mean, you didn't have to. You could have stayed with the others, but you came with me." Penn didn't respond right away. She poked the fire again, sending a small shower of sparks into the air, and then looked up at him. There was a softness in her gaze, something that Gareth wasn't used to seeing from her. Penn was often sharp, sarcastic, quick with a quip or a cutting remark, but in this moment, she seemed different, almost vulnerable, though he wasn't sure if that was the right word. "You're my partner," she said simply, as if that explained everything. "We survived together. I wasn't about to leave you to fend off a pack of wolves, or worse." Gareth blinked, taken aback by the sincerity in her voice. He had always known Penn was loyal, but hearing it said so plainly, so matter-of-factly, stirred something deep within him. He wasn't used to people being this loyal to him, not in the way Penn was. Most of his life, he had been alone, relying on his own wits and resourcefulness to get by. But Penn? She was different. She was always there, always had his back, even when things looked bleak. "Thanks," Gareth said, though the word felt woefully inadequate. How could he express what her presence meant to him, especially after everything they had been through? I don't know what I'd do without you." Penn shrugged, as if brushing off the gravity of his words. "You'd be fine. You're tougher than you think." Gareth wasn't so sure about that. If it hadn't been for Penn, he would have been wolf food back there. "Tougher than I think, huh?" "I don't feel very tough right now," he muttered, rubbing his face with his hands as if he could scrub away the lingering fear. "Surviving that makes you tough," Penn replied. "You think I've never been scared like that?" "I have. Plenty of times. It's not about not feeling the fear. It's about what you do when it hits you." Gareth looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. "You? Scared?" Penn raised an eyebrow at him, her lips quirking into a small smile. "What, you think I was born fearless or something? Trust me, I've been scared out of my mind more times than I can count. Especially when I was younger. Hell, I almost pissed myself the first time I saw a bear in the wild." "A bear?" Gareth asked, suddenly remembering their earlier conversation. "Wait, that wolf was smaller than a bear? And you said they're out here too?" Penn chuckled, shaking her head. "Yeah, bears. They're much bigger than wolves, but they're not always aggressive. Still, if you run into one, the rule is simple: don't fight, don't try to stare it down. Just get the hell out of there. Fast. There's no reasoning with a bear." Gareth's eyes widened in disbelief. "Bigger than that thing? You're telling me bears are out there, wandering around, just waiting to tear someone apart?" Penn nodded. "Pretty much. But they usually avoid people if they can. Wolves too, for the most part. The one we just dealt with was probably starving or desperate, which is why it came after us." Gareth leaned back against the log behind him, exhaling slowly. Great. So we're stuck on a planet with wolves, bears, and whatever else is out there. Fantastic. Pen's smile grew, and she shook her head. You'll get used to it. Besides, you handled yourself pretty well back there. Gareth gave her a skeptical look. I froze. If you hadn't been there. You did what you had to do, Pen interrupted. And you listened to me. That's what matters. You didn't panic and run. You stayed calm. That's more than most people would have done in your situation. Gareth wasn't so sure about that, but he appreciated the sentiment. He glanced at the fire, watching as the flames danced and flickered in the cool night air. The crackling of the wood was oddly comforting now that the danger had passed, a reminder that they were still alive, still together. For a while, they sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of the forest gradually filling the space between them. The tension that had gripped Gareth earlier slowly began to ebb away, replaced by a sense of cautious relief. The forest, once ominous and foreboding, now felt almost peaceful in its quiet serenity. After a few moments, Pen spoke again, her voice softer this time. You know, back when I first started exploring, I had no idea what I was doing. I was reckless, overconfident. Thought I could handle anything. But that's how you learn, right? By getting thrown into situations you're not ready for. Gareth nodded, understanding the sentiment. He had been through his share of dangerous situations, though they were often more mechanical in nature, spacecraft malfunctions, technical failures, that sort of thing. But this was different. Being stranded on an unknown planet, facing creatures he had never seen before, was a whole new level of danger. So what changed? Gareth asked, genuinely curious. You seem so in control now. Like nothing rattles you. Pen snorted softly. Oh, things rattle me. I just got better at hiding it. But honestly, it's experience. After a while, you start to realize that fear is just part of the job. You don't get rid of it, but you learn how to manage it. You take a deep breath, think through the problem, and trust your instincts. Or, in her case, trust your partner. Gareth looked at her, feeling a swell of gratitude. Pen had saved his life more times than he could count, and each time, she had done it with the same unwavering determination. She made it seem effortless, though he knew it wasn't. She had her own fears, her own doubts, but she never let them show. I trust you, Gareth said, the words coming out more serious than he had intended. I mean, I really do. I don't think I'd still be alive if it weren't for you. Pen met his gaze, her expression softening for just a moment. You're not so bad yourself, she said, her voice quiet. We make a good team. They sat there for a while longer, neither feeling the need to fill the silence with words. The fire continued to burn low, casting a warm glow over their small campsite. The night air was cool but not uncomfortable, and the forest seemed to have returned to its natural rhythm, the sounds of nocturnal creatures filling the gaps in the conversation. As Gareth stared into the flames, he couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle over him. It was strange, given everything that had happened in the last few hours, but for the first time in a long while, he felt safe. Not just because of the fire or the distance they had put between themselves and the wolf, but because of Pen. She had been with him through thick and thin, always ready to stand by his side, no matter the odds. Pen, he said after a long pause, do you ever think about what comes after? After all this? I mean, once we're off this planet, once we're back to normal. What then? Pen didn't answer right away. She stared into the fire, her brow furrowing slightly, as if she hadn't really thought about it before. Finally, she shrugged. I don't know. I guess I never really thought that far ahead. Gareth nodded, understanding all too well. They had been living in the moment for so long, constantly moving from one crisis to the next, that thinking about the future seemed almost foreign. But now, with the immediate danger past and the fire warming their skin, it felt like the right time to ask. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, Gareth admitted. What happens when we finally catch a break? When we don't have to be constantly running or fighting to survive? I guess I wonder what kind of life we'd have after all this. Pen glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "What kind of life do you want?" Gareth shrugged, feeling a little embarrassed. He hadn't expected the question to be turned back on him so quickly. "I don't know," he said, though that wasn't entirely true. "Maybe something quieter. Less dangerous. I think I've had enough excitement to last a lifetime." Pen chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Quiet doesn't really suit you, Gareth." "No?" Gareth asked, raising an eyebrow. "What suits me, then?" Pen smirked, leaning back on her hands as she looked at him. "You're a problem solver. You'd get bored with quiet. You need something to fix, something to work on. I can't see you just sitting around, waiting for life to happen." Gareth laughed, surprised by how accurate her assessment was. "Yeah, maybe you're right. But still, I wouldn't mind a little peace and quiet for a while. No wolves, no bears, no crashing onto strange planets." "Fair enough," Pen said, her smile softening. "But whatever happens, we'll figure it out. Together." Gareth looked at her, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. He wasn't sure what the future held, but knowing that Pen would be there with him made it seem a little less daunting. They had survived this long together, after all. Whatever came next, they could handle it. For now, though, they had a long night ahead of them. The fire was burning low, and the stars above were growing brighter as the sky darkened. They would need to rest, to regain their strength for whatever challenges awaited them tomorrow. But for the first time in a long while, Gareth felt a sense of hope,